Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So if you've been following along with the 49 Chevy build, on the last video, we got everything ready for epoxy to start some of the filler work on everything we've created in the back. So just a little recap. We've taken the stock style stake pockets, which are square. We created a little transition in those where they've got a nice curve. They look good as they're flowing down. We built the roll pan from scratch. We've got the tail lights in it. We've got a skinned roll pan, so that's all solid in the back. We've had to build a new bed floor in the bed to raise the floor because we have the Roadster Shop chassis on the truck now, which makes it sit a lot lower, which means the frame rails are coming up into the bed, therefore having to raise that bed floor. We've also teardropped the end of the bed rails. That looks really good. We've done that on both sides. So over there, it kind of transitions around the cab, which looks really nice. We've got the front bumper shaved. We got all that done. We've done the split bumper in the rear. So we took a 68 Camaro bumper, cut it into two pieces, and now we've got a nice looking custom rear end on this truck. We're running intro wheels, which look bitchin'. Got the truck really low to the ground. We've got our seats done, interiors done. So we're under a serious deadline on this one, but we're getting really close, really fast. But we got to keep moving along. So here's what we're doing today. We're going to get this bare metal into epoxy. So if you guys haven't been following this 49 Chevy build, we built this truck 12, 13 years ago. The owner runs the show circuit with it. The truck's going to the finals, the ISCA finals, and we are kind of redoing the truck to debut it again at this final. So since we did the truck, we had it all down to bare metal. The paint's held up great on it. Everything looks good. There's hardly any product on this truck at all. We put the mill scale gauge on it, and I mean, it is so minimal how much material's on here. Luckily, since we did it, we know what we did. We know how much product's on it. We don't have to strip the entire truck. So we're going to get all the bare metal into epoxy today. We're going to start some of the filler work, and we're going to see if we can get some of this stuff into our Evercoat high build primer, and then just start prepping everything for paint along with trying to get the truck blown apart. We're undecided with the owner yet if we're going to powder coat the frame or paint it, so we got to make that decision. And we're just going to see how far we get this week. But let's see if we can get this thing outside. We'll get this bare metal into epoxy. Hopefully start doing a little filler work. All right, let's move this baby out. So far, we've been able to get the exhaust mocked up under the truck. We've got the exhaust hangers in place, tacked in, ready for weld. One exhaust pipe fully welded up, ready for polish. All right, so we've got all that exhaust finished up under the truck today. We've got one side fully welded in. We've got our exhaust hangers in place. They're looking good. They're billet clamp-on exhaust hangers, so those look nice under the truck. Getting really close to blowing that apart now. So day one of this week's looking pretty good. We've got the epoxy down on the bed. We've got a couple of coats of epoxy. So now that that's sat for a little while today, we're ready to start filler working, which we're doing now. So we've started body working some of the small spots that we've got on the bed. We're using all Evercoat products for the fillers and the primers. So we're gonna get this thing worked. We're gonna get all the filler work done, and then we're gonna lay down a polyester primer over that. We're gonna get all that blocked. Then we're gonna lay down a urethane, Evercoat's Eurofill primer, and that's going to be our final stage where we'll start to sand it for paint. So the guys have really been rocking on it today. We've got that far so far. We've got that far so far. We've got that far. That's a pretty good t-shirt idea right there. And I've been working on the paint booth. We're so close to ready to paint on this thing that I've got to get the paint booth done. They finally got here, got our exhaust done. I'm doing a paint booth video of installing the paint booth, so you'll have to check that out on the channel when it drops, but I'll show you real quick what we're doing. So if we walk through this door, we walk into the paint room. This is going to be the paint room. You see the paint booth going up right now, the exhaust going through the ceiling. There's our mixing bank that we'll get in place soon with all our BASF Glazerite products. So hopefully I can get that knocked out in the next day or so. So tomorrow when we hop back on this thing, hopefully we're getting the bed into primer. Also got the front lower valance piece body worked, and it's ready for primer. So far so good. Pretty good day, I'd say. All right, so we're getting really close on the bed. We got everything pretty well filler work, looking really good. Got the filler work over the epoxy. Love that Evercoat stuff. That's gonna be nice. Getting close, Ben? So the translation from Ben is we're getting really close. I think he's in 80 grit right now. We got a little bit more to work, a few more spots on there. Getting really close to primer. So while we've been over there body working the bed, Bob's been over here welding up the exhaust. And we're getting close to ready to blow this thing apart, but what do you got going, Bob?
Well, we got, I figured I'd better check the steering on this, steering shaft on this before we take it all apart, because we've got a new chassis. He was on an S10 chassis, now we're on Roadster Shop chassis, and we have new headers. So here's the rack. New joint coming off of it. Here's the steering column. Looks like we may need to might have to do a shorter steering column, but I think I might have just figured something out to make this work. And it should work out pretty good.
I hope so.
You drill a hole right there. If it comes out that way, and weld the fucking nut to the frame. Put it in there like that. in here somewhere. I don't know what I got there. I believe that'll work.
So close. It looks like it will.
Yeah, it looks like it will.
Nice. All right, so I know that was kind of hard to see under there, not a lot of light. So here's our steering shaft setup right here. So we've got a double D shaft. So if you're running just a straight shaft, you'd have a steering joint, which are these right here on each end of this. Now, we're not able to do that because our headers are in the way and we've got such a pitch to get down there to the rack and pinion. So that means we have to run more than one joint. So anytime you want to do that, you want to have some sort of support in between, which is where we're running this heim joint. This will mount to the frame. This will help support this system. This will attach to the rack. We'll run up to the heim joint, another steering shaft, and into our column. So that's the setup we're running. Ben's got most of the filler work already done on the bed. So now we're on to our final step before primer. So if you look close, just in a couple of places, you can see like we've got a small little pinhole right here, a couple down here. So now that we've got our filler how we like it, as opposed to spreading more filler on there, we're gonna lay down Evercoat's Z-Grip Optics putty. This stuff's perfect for when you have scratches or little pinholes that you want to fill because it's a much thinner material than the filler itself. It's self-level, so it's really nice, really easy to sand. So with your filler like we're doing on the bed now, that's going to fill your bigger dents or your bigger imperfections, and then you're just going to go back with your putty and just fill in those small imperfections you may have in your filler. So Ben's going to get that spread now, and that's our last step before we lay down polyester. So with our epoxy that we laid down first, that our filler is on top of, we've got a 72-hour window before we can top coat that. So we're still well within that window. We're going to get the putty laid down, get a little primer on it, and start prepping this thing for paint. I'd say this is going pretty well. We've got a lot happening really fast. We've got everything blown apart now. Carter's got the chassis completely torn down. We're prepping everything to paint, but it looks like we may have found a powder coater that can get all this powdered for us in the timeline we're trying to do it, which is in a week. So they told us if we brought it, they could get it powdered the same day, get it back to us the next day. So I think that's the route we're gonna go. We've got the bottom of the cab already sanded, prepped, ready for paint. And we've got the bed that we're working on. So we've got the polyester laid down, Ben's blocking on that now so we can get the urethane Evercoat laid down and we can start prepping that for paint. The booth is being wired up right now, so we should be able to start moving stuff in there pretty soon. The last thing that we need to do in this video before the week's up is we've got the rear body mounts we had to make on the Roaster Shop chassis. We changed those because if you look at a stock 49 Chevy truck, that era truck, they have like a bushing style body mount. Almost looks like a little leaf spring type of deal. And we didn't really like that. So we built a rear body mount to match Roaster Shop's front body mount. So I've got to finish welding those on, and then that heim joint that we put in the steering, we made that bracket, and that's got to be welded onto the frame. So I'm going to get those welded on right now. And then I'd say we've had a really good week. So let's get those welded on and hopefully we can get this thing out to powder coat. Ready to weld. All right, so if you're new to the channel or new to welding, especially TIG welding, I figured we'd go over some of the basics of TIG welding. So what we're using to weld these mounts on is our Lincoln Electric Square Wave 200. Now this is a really handy TIG welder because it works as a 110 or a 220. So if you need more power, 220, but obviously there's 110s all around here. So for welding stuff like we are right now, we don't need that kind of power and we can plug into a 110. What we're welding is 1/8 inch metal. These brackets we built in the rear, 1/8 inch, and you can get one of these nifty little measuring tools for metal, stick it right on there. It'll tell you exactly what it is. So when we're setting up our welder, basically the way a TIG works is it's 1 amp on the TIG welder per thousandths of the thickness of metal you're using. So for instance, we're using 1/8 inch. We know that by our guide. So that's going to be 125 amps. And that's a great starting point for that. You can obviously dial it in as you go. And on a TIG welder, we're using straight argon. So the tank is argon, and we're going to run 20 to 30 CFH. Now CFH is cubic feet per hour. That's going to let you know how much gas you're using. Now on our torch, if we're welding 1/8 inch, you know, a number 7, number 8, number 10 cup, this is the cup, is what you'd want to use. I like a little bigger cup. I normally keep a 12 on here for most of the steel that we do. If you're doing aluminum, it's totally different animal. We'll talk about that later on. But I'm using a Furic number 12 cup. Like I said, 7, 8, or 10, perfect for this. And we're running between the 20 to 30 CFH. We've got a sky blue tungsten in here. The sky blue tungstens can pretty much weld just about any metal, especially what we're doing around the shop, which is mainly stainless, mild steel, and aluminum. We never have to change out our tungsten, so that works really well. So with the TIG welder, what's a little different is it just really takes a lot of practice. You can know kind of the guidelines of what you need to do, which is torch angle, kind of holding it 90 degrees. I'm always angling the torch toward the direction that I'm welding. That way our flow and our arc is going in the direction that we're going, essentially, instead of holding it straight down against the metal where you're just kind of puddling there and you're trying to move over. If you tilt that just a little bit, I find that you're kind of pushing that metal as you go and you tend to get a better bead that way. So there's a few things going on when we do this. We've got obviously the torch that we're running in this hand. We've got our rod. This is mild steel rod. This is what we're going to dip into the puddle, and we're also running the pedal. So the great thing about a TIG is I like the controllability of that. If we're running 125 amps and we start welding this and we see like, dang, we're too hot, well, we can stop and adjust our TIG, but we can also just let up on our pedal a little bit. It's not going to throw as much power to it, and you can really dial it in with your foot. For a lot of people, it's a struggle because it's so much going on. But TIG welding, I tell everybody, it's just seat time. The more time you spend doing it, it's just the better you're going to get. We're getting a cleaner weld than a MIG weld. We're getting a softer weld, so it's easier to planish, to grind down, the metal finish out. Overall, if we can, I'm always trying to use the TIG welder. One important thing when we TIG, especially with the aluminum, but we're going to do it on all of our mild steel as well, is the metal needs to be really clean. Not just talking about paint or anything like that. Obviously, get your paint out of the way, grind it off, but always have a can of brake cleaner around. We'll spray this down, we'll wipe it down really good, and we'll make sure that the metal is nice and clean and there's no contaminants. The TIG does not like anything dirty. So those are pretty much just the basics to get you going on that. But yeah, if you're not TIG welding yet, definitely pick one up and give it a shot, because you'll love it once you start to get the hang of it. So let's get this cleaned up and we'll weld it. Looking good. All right, so I think we're ready to send this out to powder coat. So we're going to call that a wrap. Going to see if we can get this stuff loaded up and ready to go. Pretty productive week. Good day. Hey, if you guys need any t-shirts or anything, we've got some Hot Rod Shop shirts on the website. We've got the In Charge Charger shirts. I think we've got some Maverick shirts left and some Superbird shirts. So go check those out. There is a link in the description below. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching as always. See you on the next one.